Welcome to the Charleston Marketing Podcast, powered by the Charleston American Marketing Association, broadcasting from our home base at Charleston Radio Group. Thanks to CRG, we're able to talk to the movers and shakers of Charleston, from economy to art, from hospitality to tech, and everything in between. These leaders have made a home here in the Lowcountry. They live here, they work here, they make change here. Why? Let's talk about it.
Welcome to the Charleston Marketing Podcast, powered by the Charleston American Marketing Association. We are recording here in the Charleston Radio Group studios. Mike Compton here, president of rūmbo Advertising, GoRūmbo.com, and your director of membership experience. Thanks for joining us, listeners. Today we have a co-host, Darius Kelli. Darius, who are you, buddy?
I'm the owner of DK Design, a design and marketing company right here in Charleston, South Carolina, and I'm also the sponsorship director for the AMA.
Yes. Thank you for your support and your hard work, Darius. We had a great event last night. Again, we're dating this, but whatever. The last 2023 Spark Awards was really well done, and you helped out with that big time. So it was good. It was good. So we, most importantly, here have Dr. Matthews. We're very blessed right now to have her here. She's giving us her time, which I'm still, pinch me right now. I'm still kind of figuring out why.
Waving offies.
Thank you for coming.
Absolutely. I'm excited to be here.
Yes.
We're honored to have you, so this is going to be fun.
Yes, it is. It is.
The Charleston Radio Group. It is. These people are great here. Have you?
It is.
Paul O'Malley.
It's really nice. Team? Yep. All the folks, meeting them here. They do amazing things for the community and helping folks out.
So we're in Chef's studio right now.
We are.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The engineer wants you to talk closer.
Oh.
Yeah. Thanks for allowing me out, Mike. Nobody had to know that. But thank you. Are we good, Chef? Or are we good? Right,
no, that's not Chef, but that's all right.
Well, see, again, two strikes.
We're having fun. Dr. Matthews, let's read your bio. This is the awkward part where you're going to listen about yourself.
Yes, it is.
And listeners, I had to shorten it. It was a great story. I wanted to read it all, but I had to cut some things, just little things. So Dr. Matthews, as a nonprofit executive veteran, she's currently the president and chief executive officer of the International African American Museum, IAAM, located in Charleston, South Carolina, at the historically sacred site of the Gadsden's Wharf. Under Dr. Matthews' leadership, IAAM has become a champion of authentic, empathetic storytelling of African American history, and thus is one of the nation's newest platforms for the disruption of institutionalized racism as America continues to walk toward a more perfect union. I didn't write this, obviously. This is really, really, I mean, I sound like a poet. You're the poet here, Doc. Dr. Matthews' storied career includes her role as an associate provost in the Inclusive Workforce Development and director of the STEM Innovation Learning Center at Wayne State University, and prior to that, as the president and CEO of the Michigan Science Center, flexing her science and STEM education equity chops in both roles. She is the founder of STEMista.
STEMista, yes.
Thank you, Doc. STEMista Project, a movement to engage girls in their future with STEM careers. I'm only halfway through. This is amazing. I'm a Michigander myself, so thank you for all you.
Oh, are you?
Yes,
okay.
Yes. She's been noted as one of Charleston's most influential by Charleston's Business Magazine twice, and honored as a trailblazer by Career Mastered Magazine in 2017. She is the former member of the National Academy of Science Board on Science Education, and was appointed by both Democratic and Republican administrations to the National Assessment Governing Board. How does that work out?
More perfect union.
Amazing. She has authored several articles and book chapters on inclusive board governance, on nonprofit management, and fundraising. Dr. Matthews is a published poet and is included in 100 Best African American Poems. Finally, Dr. Matthews received her PhD in biomedical engineering. Who are you? From Johns Hopkins University, and her BSc in biomedical and electrical engineering from Duke University.
Woo-woo.
Pause for drama there, inflection. Alongside a certificate in African and African American Studies. Dr. Matthews is a native Washington, D.C., and in each community she has settled is known for planting roots on the side of town, best for keeping an eye on progress. Wow. Yes. Yes. Welcome to the show. Now that we have that out of the way.
Well done.
Well, I screwed up a little bit, but I'm human. Wow. Where do we begin, Darius? How do we even start this conversation right now with Dr. Matthews?
Let's start up with how she got to Charleston. How'd you
Okay.
in our city?
We know you're from D.C.
Yes. So how I got to Charleston. Now this being the low country, I can easily say A, God. And B, God got folks to hire a search firm. So when the International African American Museum was ready to enter this next phase, we decided we needed to go big. We hired a national search firm to find the next leader, and my name was thrown in the hat. And I have to admit, one of my mentors was one of the very early historians who consulted on this project. And that was, 15, 20 years ago. And I was halfway through the interview process before I realized that the museum was still not open. I almost shut down. I said, "But this is the same one we've been working on." They said, "Yes, that is its own story and historical journey." But having sort of that early connection and sort of knowing, what the institution was trying to do, from there it was a quick slide. It was a quick slide into the low country for me. I even snuck into town during the process because during these processes they fly you in, you get to meet people. Right. I decided I wanted to get a sense of the space sort of on my own without that whole curated experience. And so I hopped on a plane. I didn't tell anybody that I was coming down. I wandered around the construction site. Went to barbecue spot, had some shrimp and grits, eat the food, meet the people. But it was really about seeing how people respond to you on the street, wave or don't wave, and the energy of the space. And that was pretty much when I decided that if the offer was going to come my way, that I was
people
gonna be on
waved.
my
Then
way
you
to
got waved at, or you did not? Like, what was that experience?
Folks hug. Listen,
that's
how
what I'm
we are
talking about.
hugging entire strangers after just a few minutes of good casual conversation is a whole new thing coming out of D.C. and Detroit. But yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, yeah. For sure, D.C. Detroit's a little loving in their own way. I'm lovable.
Detroit is definitely. They got what they called Michigan nice. We got a little bit. We got a little bit of that going on. But straight hugging strangers. That is definitely. That's definitely Charleston. That's definitely.
So you fell in love right then and there.
I knew that this was going to be, I think, the opportunity. And I have to say there was also something to knowing that it was taking 20 years and I was going to be the one to help lead us over the finish line. That definitely had some heart-stopping resonance for me. Yeah.
Okay. So I went this morning.
Yes, you did.
I have my.
You did. I see you have your clip on. You have your clip on.
Yeah. I'm still buzzing. Mm-hmm. It's just such a proud monument in a weird way. It's something you do want to be proud of, but I'm like, gosh, what you did in there for you. I was asking Darius, do you think she walks out of that building and feels the air come from the water and just feels like a proud moment every time you walk out of that building? You have to have a sense of pride. I know I did for the first time, and I didn't have anything to do with it.
Mm-hmm. So you've both been, yes?
Yes.
Okay. So, so it's interesting. The space has all of the emotions and all of the moments, and a lot of time it is definitely pride. If you've been to the museum or you're coming to the museum, and you've walked through transatlantic experiences, it's really hard to walk past those screens at a certain point, listen to that soundtrack, and not have a little swagger. It's just very, very hard. It's very hard. So you do a little something with your shoulders there, and then so that's definitely pride. And there are times when you're looking out over the ocean and you're thinking, "Whew, all right, we are still working to make this right." Because you are in the space, you get the pride, you get the joy, you also get the history. And then there are also some days when running an organization is not always bells, whistles, chocolate and roses. You try to walk past the monument at the where the former storage house was.
Oh my, I did.
And the ancestors say, "Really, you got problems, girl? Get in there, okay? Listen, we have worked for this. We have prepared you for this." And so sometimes the winds are saying some encouraging things to keep us going and keep it moving.
One thing that I took away from going was just the storytelling. How when you walk through, like you said, like you feel and you break down decade by decade, and you have the locations, and you have the artifacts from all these different locations. Like it really brings the whole thing full circle.
I definitely resonate with that. I think one of the reasons, the approach that we took, and a lot of it, I'm sort of leading us over the finish line, but a lot of it was coming into fruition before I got here. Our way of giving history is storytelling. It really is feeling more of a story, and you can jump from objects to interactions to different kinds of stories, which works really well for me. I mean, you read the background. So my background is really in engineering.
Yeah.
So the one thing that I actually bring to the table is I'm a hard sell when it comes to history. Right. So I go in with that mindset.
What does that mean?
Of so you have some folks who love history. Like, where are we going today? We're going to History Museum. Yay! And then you have the rest. Oh,
okay.
That kind, and so I know what it's like to have to be drawn in, right? So I know all the tricks. I know all the techniques. I know what gets me excited. And so a lot of times I'm in the space like a visitor. Like someone who is coming perhaps out of obligation. We run into a lot of families that, listen, we knew we just had to come because it was going to be important. We never expected to enjoy ourselves. We didn't expect we were going to be here for 2-3 hours. And I think that's part of the way we're telling the stories, the way we've got art and music and video and all of that stuff in the space, I think really helps to keep the story alive.
That's a very unique perspective. Usually, I would assume people try to find somebody that's a big history buff. But when we walk through the museum, it doesn't feel like a traditional museum.
Yeah, and I think, a lot of museums that you'll see today, we're all sort of struggling to be new institutions, right? Museums are centuries and centuries old, and so we're all thinking about, new ways. But I will say, we have all the layers, right? So you have the newcomers, we have our public historian on staff, we have curators on staff, we have a registrar, but we also have educators, our religious faith-based team. And so all of those museums, you should be seeing lots of layers. And every once in a while, we get a for-profit expat want to come over, and repair the karma just a little bit. So we have it takes all kinds of minds to run a museum.
Yeah. Your team, how big is it?
Our team now is hovering around 70.
70 folks.
And we have grown. When I got here early 2021, we were hovering around 12, 13. And so we've built up very quickly in terms of that, already busting at the seams, literally in our office space.
And you just opened up when again?
We opened up on June 27th, 2023 at 10 a.m.
Feels like yesterday.
or 3-4 years ago. Yeah, it's been, we're not even at 6 months. We're not even at 6 months.
6 months, 70 folks. That's a quick jump. We're a marketing agency.
Yeah.
What in the
boy, that was
I can't wrap my head around it. I mean, the building itself.
Yeah.
The red tape you had to go through to get to the building, the funding that you had to get to this, and then the idea of this, all of this, that's a monumental portion.
Right.
But then building and the way you built it, how it's raised up, and all of the thought between the property, and I did walk down and I did feel the wind, and I did hear things, and I was like, whoa, I gotta go. I felt all the emotions going through. I cried a little bit. I watched the whole Gullah story too, and how you say that you want to tell the story and keep telling the story even if it's a sad one. Huge. Got me sold. I mean, I didn't have to be, you weren't selling to me, but you know what I mean, like I was just going through it all, and you did a great job.
Thank you.
Is the long story of that. How did you get through all of that? A lot of patience, I'm sure, a lot of deep breathing. Work.
Yes, all of that.
Can I ask you how many years it took to get to that point?
23.
I'm sorry.
So from
it took you 20.
the
the museum, from the idea to opening day was 23 years. Now,
Did you hear the pause? I was like, wait.
So, it's really interesting, when folks look at that, and even I had sort of that same kind of reaction. I mean, but part of it is you have to understand what we've done. And by we, I mean the global we, I mean the community of Charleston and all of our supporters across the state and beyond. So we have built one of the largest history museums in the country and dedicated to African Americans in the heart of the Deep South. One more time for the people in the back.
Yeah,
exactly.
Okay, so
That's right.
Say that one more
it's,
time.
it's huge. I mean, with our gardens included, we are around 120,000 square feet or so. Most museums are much smaller. We're a $120 million build-up project. We are talking about the African American journey from the African American perspective, using the African American voice in South Carolina. Now, I'm here now. This is now my beloved home, and South Carolina is no longer what folks think it is. This is true. But we are still in the heart of the South, and we are still uncovering these stories and grappling with these histories. And so if you think about the amount of time it would take to do something like that right, in this space, and wanted to be this grand, former Mayor Riley wanted something grand. If you know anything about Joe Riley, everything was big, beautiful, and beyond. And this being an African American history museum didn't change that. So I figured the first decade was literally just political capital, right? Just let's convince folks that we should do this, that we can do this, and that people will care. Like that this is the right thing to do. So once you spent that first decade convincing people we should do this, you had to spend another half decade convincing folks that it could be done. Because not every good idea is possible. Okay, first of all, I don't actually believe that part, but I will just go ahead and say that. Not every good idea is necessarily possible. So that was another half a decade at least, convincing people like we could actually do this. Now everybody knows this is a good thing. We could do this. And then from there, the ball starts rolling in kind of a different way. But mind you, now you're at the 15-year mark. You got to go back and talk to some of the folks you talked to in year 2 and year 3 because times have changed. And then I think while we think about the pandemic, when folks think about the pandemic, they think about the challenges to the construction because we broke ground in late 2019. To do the math. Yeah. So we broke ground in late 2019. So folks are definitely thinking about the construction and the supply chain. But okay, so we got all that covered. We're an African American history museum that was planned before 2020. So 2020 hits, and history has the nerve to keep happening. Right. So can you imagine an African American history museum opening up and not taking that into consideration at all? So that was huge for us as well. So if you kind of look at sort of the big picture, it sounds like a really sort of long number, and you're like, how did it take that long? There's some days when I think, how do we open up so early? I could have used a couple more years in terms of that, but that's essentially the 23-year journey.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what? There was this awesome. Darius, do you have anything? I didn't want to.
No, go ahead. I got some questions. So.
Because it's just still fresh in my memory. The art exhibit that was toward the genealogy center. Which the genealogy portion is amazing, that's a whole other conversation. But the art exhibit, does it change out?
So I think you're talking about the special exhibitions gallery that's across from. Yep, that is actually our special exhibitions gallery. So it is designed to be changeable and malleable. What you are looking at right now will be the second changing exhibition gallery. So just as we're speaking now, Fletcher Williams III exhibition is rolling out, and creative conversations, creative collaborations is coming into the space, and we'll be changing it out again in early 2024.
What is that process like to...
A lot.
I hope it's not 23 years worth of planning for those.
It's not. And so so we have this way of thinking about things as sort of like A, B, and C. So A is it's a lot. It requires the entire institution. Please don't do more of those in 1 year. Try not to do them in back-to-back years. Then there's B. Okay, we can handle B. Take some lifting, but we got this. So exhibitions tend to be A or B. So for example, our first 2 opening exhibitions, we had a collaboration with the Smithsonian. So we brought in Men of Change, and we brought in that exhibition. Now that exhibition comes with directions. Okay, it literally comes with directions and support, and then you figure out how to put it into your space. Every space is unique, so we do have to do some reconfiguring and figure out what it's going to look like in that space, and then figure out what programming goes around it. Then we had Fletcher Williams the third. He is a local. He's a low country brother. And so he's doing a solo exhibition in the space. And so he was building for our space, right? He had some ideas and concepts and things that he done, working with one artist in that space. So those are both kind of in that B level.
Okay.
In the spring of 2024, late spring, early summer, we'll be launching the exhibition Follow the North Star. Everybody gotta come see this. Follow the North Star. It's going to be very, very big. We've designed it and created it ourselves with extraordinary generosity from Michelin, and it will tour for 2 to 3 years. So this is one of those exhibitions where we launch it, we figure out how to write the directions for it, and then launch it to other museums around the country. It's based on this very loose definition of mobility, African American mobility, everything from obviously the transatlantic slave trade to the Great Migration to dancing to Afrofuturism to socioeconomic mobility. So we're just really kind of playing with that word.
So if I'm an artist, how do I pitch or get my exhibition to be involved with the museum?
Let me say first and foremost, it is not called the CEO. Okay, great. So
I was just imagining myself at your boardroom, like sitting there, like everybody have like. Go ahead, keep going.
So it's interesting. So this is actually where curation and the curatorial team sort of comes in. So first, the museum has ideas about what themes and what projects and what conversations we actually want to be talking about, right? It's a very, very big, broad. And so then we will put out the call, or folks will refer us to folks that may make sense in that space. Now, mind you, it does make sense, like anything else, to have yourself on the museum's radar, having those conversations with that curatorial team. It's important to see and to know the museum, right? You go into the museum so that you kind of understand sort of what we are working with. And then after that, there's the curatorial process. For everyone who raises a hand, there's a committee or an advisory group or a lead curator that sort of decides, sort of which pieces go in there, which pieces talk together. We like to say our art is in conversation.
It is.
With the history and the stories we tell. And so I would say, it is a complex process. It's a high level process, but I would also say that it is a process that is so small compared to the amount of art that's out there. I encourage all artists to never be discouraged if a particular museum or gallery is not accepting your work. There's far more extraordinary work than there are extraordinary spaces to hold the work. Right. And it's almost like matchmaking, right? You're really looking for the right fit.
Timing.
And timing and sort of all of that kind of thing. And so, I do put that out there, that just because, the museum isn't able to host or even chooses this is not a good fit for us, it's usually not actually about the art itself. It's actually about the moment and what we're trying to do.
Gosh, so much. So if an artist, which Darius is a fantastic artist, was to reach out, would it be like info@IAAM.org type of thing?
Oh, actually, it's even more specific than that. Like on our web pages, we have like different places where if you want to donate money,
Yep.
or if you have an object in your home. And then also on the curatorial side, in terms of that.
On your site,
and
perfect.
As we grow, we may also get to the point where we want to do some very large calls, right? Because part of the challenge of being in a museum like ours, we're now one of the big museums, have lots of processes, lots of protocol, that there isn't always the space for sort of community-driven art. And a lot of it's because folks aren't connected to those channels. And so part of what I do see in our future is not tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen, our future is our future, is be able to do a larger call so that people can hear, hey, this is the theme, this is the date, we're not looking for anything specific, show us what you got.
Cool.
And try to put some things together like that. Also, working to be host other galleries and places across the Low Country that would like some of our support and figuring out how to set something up, or do something like that as well. I can see us in those spaces too.
Yeah, so much opportunity.
So much.
How are you handling all of this? And how many assistants do you have? And how big is your inner circle? And do you need another one? Because I'm available.
Goodness. It's very interesting. All the rumors around self-care and the dire need for it are quite true. And so let me shout out my compatriots. I think we are making really good and important space, I think, for young people and the younger generation to voice their needs for space and for self-care. But I do want to acknowledge that folks, at the other end who have quote unquote arrived, also find themselves in those same spaces, especially when we're also being called into the space to support the self-care of those that we are here to support, right? A big part of my job is being the rock and the inspiration for the team, right? Working on the nonprofit side, it is all a struggle, and that's struggle with a C. It is all a struggle, right? But because we do it, this is the team that believes, right? Each of us could be in different spaces, making different amounts of money, doing exactly what we do, but for different reasons, right? It's the mission that actually draws folks in, and so it's very important for the leaders of those kinds of institutions to be solid. I ain't never worried about budget, never scared. And also inspiring, right? And so, leading this museum, I think is no exception. So I do have a meditation schedule. I have a yoga schedule that I violate constantly. I take boxing classes.
Really?
Okay.
Listen, sometimes just not gonna do it. Okay.
Where do you box?
So, actually, I will go ahead and do this because it's independent coming up. A shout out to a Rock Box.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
I'm in there with Rock Box. I'm only hitting the bags. I'm not visualizing anything in particular. No, I'm not visualizing. Sort of doing those kinds of things, and trying to honor vacation, which many of my team will tell you I'm not good at. But here's another shout out to leadership. If you don't take time off, your team won't take time off. And I actually had to learn that it wasn't just about whether or not I could take it. I had to be sort of very conscious about whether or not other people, also needed sort of breaks and rest. And you are better when you rest. We all pretend we not, but we are.
It's a great point.
We are.
We're all human.
I need a nap.
Yeah, recharge.
Exactly.
I got a quick question, just to go back to the boxing.
Go for it.
When did you start boxing?
Yes.
You can't just gloss over that one, right?
Literally right before the opening. I kid you not. I was like, we have got to do something. We've got to do something. And so I happened to be sort of out and about with one of the folks that I spent some time with, and she was telling me about like her friend who had done this whole rock box gym thing, and she had gone once, but she didn't like it because she didn't like the hit stuff. And I was like, wait, I feel like I might be more like the other person. And so I went for a free class, and I enjoy it. The better the music is, the better I keep it going. No, I do not spar with people, because I like to hit things that don't hit back.
There you go.
So that's where I am right now.
So what's the music that
I thought you were gonna say that next.
When
Please,
you're
it's
unloading
hip-hop.
these
Like,
punches?
wait,
Okay,
what?
there we go.
What was there
90s hip hop for me. I don't know.
Absolutely.
Live or die.
But part of it also has a very steady beat. And so, when you're doing that thing and you're trying to ignore your body, if you're just sort of like on the beats, and as someone with rhythm who also likes to dance, like being off beat just does not work for me.
Yeah.
And so that tends to keep me going, at least at the bag. I've been known to skip several push-ups and burpees.
So we need to add that to the bio.
We'll put in the show notes. Listeners, take notes. I mean, what she's saying is true, though. You have to have self-care. You have to get out and sweat every day.
Yeah.
Darius, what else you got?
Okay, let's transition out the museum for a little while.
Let's talk about marketing. We only have 17 minutes.
Oh, shoot. Okay, yes, let's
But go
talk
ahead,
marketing.
Darius.
No, you go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Because I wanted to ask more about like, coming up.
Yes.
Go
for
how
it.
did you? Because you've done so much.
Michigan experience.
Duke University.
So, it's interesting, so I did, all of my, say, educational career has been in majority institutions, right? Predominantly white institutions, perhaps outside of kindergarten. And, that does come with an interesting amount of pressure in that space. And then I've also done, what is now considered some zigzagging. So my mother is an educator. So my mother's a teacher, long-term teacher. Ultimately, she ended up also at university. But when she was at university, she was either teaching or she was building student support programs. Okay. Right. So that's that background. Daddy was a cop, 23 plus years, DC Metro, retired, went back to DC Housing Authority. So Daddy was a cop through and through. And so, it was very, very interesting, I think, with that. So I grew up in a home that really valued how booky I was. Okay, right. So this is the home that, valued books. This is what I would get for gifts. Granddad used to call me computer chip. We used to get paid. Funny. We used to get paid for our report cards every time we got an A. He made a big deal about the fact that he was no longer going to pay me for my report card because I was too expensive.
He was bankrupting him.
Which is a really complimentary way of him being cheap. I mean, when I have 7 grades, come on now. But it really sort of valued and helped me to value, so this bookie sense of me, this nerdy sense, so that when I stepped into environments that questioned that, it didn't fit the identity that had been given to me by my family. Right. Not everyone has that gift. That was a bit of a gift and a blessing. And so it made me pause in the direction of like, well, wait, what now? Like, who are you talking to? But what actually also ended up happening was, because it was happening to me, and I could say there's clearly some disconnect here. Like, I'm not even radiating like I'm not bookie, because I didn't even know to do that. It helped me to understand, though, what was happening to the people around me, right? So, I'm coming into the space, I'm the valedictorian. I love books. I can code switch with the best of them. I'm going to be just fine. If this is the standard way that you are approaching Black students in this environment, right, what happens if they don't have this giant chip on their shoulder? What happens if they're just as smart, but they didn't come from that kind of environment that made that smartness their identity? And I began to understand why some of my classmates were not being successful, and it had not enough to do with their own talents and capacity. It was really sort of about this wave. And so that is actually what ended up happening. That is probably, even I didn't know it at the time, but that's probably what was sending me into the nonprofit space. That was probably what was reinforcing, sending me into the for good space. I had always wanted to save the world. Yeah. I think in doing that, and then of course in engineering, you just add the girl thing on top of it. Just stick the girl thing sort of on top of it. And so, what's
the girl thing? Help me out there. I asked the dumb question.
But no. So the sort of when you're in those spaces, so engineering is not still we're working on. It's not very gender friendly,
right?
In terms of, actually, it's so funny.
I follow. Okay.
My nephew, what was he, 10? My 10-year-old nephew, we were on dinner one day and he said something, and my niece was thinking, well, maybe I'll go into like chemical engineering. He flat out said, girls cannot be engineers.
In front of you.
They had to hold me back.
How old was you?
In terms of that.
That's so funny.
But it's very interesting in terms of that, like the messages that we actually pick up, and we do have to be really intentional about countering, the messages and that kind of thing. And in his mind, I wasn't an engineer; I was a boss. He said, "You're not an engineer; you're a boss." I was like, "Okay, yes, and sir." But I think that's a lot of where that is. I tend to say that, it's not that I am courageous; it's that I'm well loved. And that there is a lot of protection, I think, in that space.
How did you develop that? Because it seems like you run towards things that are out of your ballpark.
Isn't that crazy?
Service is in your blood with the teacher and the police officer.
So, at this point, I believe it has come full circle. Because, like I said, my mother's in education. I'm the oldest of 4, 2 sisters and a brother. My other 2 sisters are also in education. in different parts of education. So none of us is sort of in the classroom teaching space. So my mom was in the classroom teaching space, and then I have one sister that is in early childhood development with a specialty in autism, one sister who is in speech pathology and educational consulting, and then you got me over here in museums. So I think part of that was always where I was headed. At one point I asked my mother, why didn't you just tell me this is where I was going to be? And she said, because if I told you, you'd have tried not to do it.
So
fair.
Smart.
But, and I did actually start out in science museums. So there was a little bit of connection there with my degree and the way I could use it and leverage it. But what I realized at the end, it was the teaching part that became the passion. Right, this part of explaining the unexplainable, taking on topics that folks are afraid of. I like to shorthand it. The two scariest words in the English language are racism and algebra. I happen to do both, and so that's how I sort of think about kind of this museum journey.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing. That's an amazing story.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Self-marketing, right?
So
yes, with the marketing, it's storytelling.
Storytelling.
Yes.
100%. No, this is why we hoped to get this information out of you. We wanted you to. Who are you, right? That's right in your bio. Like you're just an amazing. Like so knowing that you come from a service and an education background and all of the love that you have around you built this master plan right here of Dr. Matthews, and now you're out to save the world a little bit, literally.
I started that at 12, but yeah.
I love hearing it, and I loved walking through the museum and listening to all the stories as I walked through and having conversation. I felt like I was having conversations with each one of those people.
Yeah,
I'm curious about the headspace. I'm a video guy. There was a lot of headspace in the verticals, but I think that was by design.
Oh,
I liked it though. I ended up liking it, and it was like, and then there's so much audio going on, but I heard what I wanted to hear.
Yeah.
Follow? Like,
yeah, it's really about, I think, where you sort of put your attention.
Yes.
And the stories that you're trying to tell. And I think, it's very interesting as you sort of talk about the marketing. Marketing is a lot about storytelling.
Yeah.
But it's about your ability to get other people to repeat your story with fidelity, right? Like to tell it right. And, real talk, in the space that we are in right now, getting folks to tell the African-American story with authenticity and empathy, the way that we do it in the building, is an interesting order to dish up. And we had lots of practice. I mean, you mentioned as we had sort of the delay in the pre-scheduled opening, and in terms of like marketing and leading the conversation, which is, it's one thing to know exactly what you're doing and why you're doing it. It's another thing to communicate that to folks in 25 words or less, right? And so, it was interesting that this was the right decision, and the decision that we needed to make, because we were going to come out the gate as a world-class museum. Now, a lot of folks were, of course, in support of that, but many folks still didn't quite understand the magnitude of what we were building inside the museum. Right? They're like, how long could it possibly take to open up a museum you're working on for 23 years?
You gotta go.
But people hadn't seen it, right? And they hadn't been inside. And so inside, we, the team, knew that no, we have to do this. Folks don't actually understand the types of artifacts, the type of art, this kind of thing that we have. However, it took us 20 years to build the story. We don't have 20 minutes to even tell the story. And so part of that was trying to sort of make that announcement so folks would have clarity on the fact, and then wheel the story into another space. But look, we're going to start our programming now. And we're going to be doing these other things. And we're going to let some people get sneak previews. And it's not so much distraction as it is getting people to focus on the part of your story that is the core, at least while we had control of that. Because I would say phase 2 is opening the museum, you were no longer in full control of the story. Once people haven't seen it, you can tell them this is what it is, this is what it's going to be. Once folks come into the space, they are seeing it, they are experiencing it. And from there, you have to think about giving folks the language that you want used. This is assuming we're all on the same page, which is we all like the museum. Giving giving folks the language that we would like for them to use, but also, I guess it's an old marketing trope. You're not who you say you are. You're who the people say you are.
Exactly.
And so also part of it is listening, right? And we're listening, and we are reinforced when we hear people say exactly what we wanted them to say. We are excited when we hear people phrase stuff better than we ever thought.
Love that.
I'm like, oh, hey, can we steal that?
Stealing it.
With no royalties? Can we? Can we
Do you mind if we borrow that just for a little while?
Just for a little bit. And honestly, folks love nothing better than to be quoted. Right? You know, so it turns into that space. But then also listening to the things that people see or perceive that was not what we intended. Right. And figuring out kind of what to do with that. Is that, you know, just sort of their perspective, or could we have done something differently in that space? And so that has been a whirlwind. We came out the gate largely in an earned media space. And for some folks who may be listening but not necessarily have all the terminology, like the earned media is when someone comes to you when they want to write a story about you versus paid media. I'm about to have a magazine ad. So, you know, for the first 6 months, if I say from the beginning of January, you know, January 2023 through September, October 2023, largely in the earned media space. You know, folks had questions. They wanted to know. We're out and about. We're talking. And we did have a national marketing firm to help us with the earned media. So it's always funny. You know, as someone who's not on the marketing side, and I love you both, I consider lots of voodoo, orchestrated voodoo. But it's, you know, we call it earned media as if you didn't do anything to get it, right? I spent good money to get people's attention sort of in this space, and then you can hit that tipping point. And the number one thing media doesn't want to do is be left out of a good story. So once you pass that tipping point, then folks will continue to come on board. And so now we're coming into the space of thinking around paid media, you know, thinking about our audiences. We do serve a very diverse audience, but we also serve a national audience. And perhaps the way we would talk about this space in the Deep South is different than the way we're going to talk about it in LA. Is different than the way we're going to talk about it up in New England, but it still has to sound and feel like us.
And has that changed a lot since the beginning, before you opened? Because as you mentioned, once you open, narratives can run. People have their own words to talk about the museum.
You know, it's interesting. I think we've been pretty good on that and pretty solid on that. I think, you know, there are blessings in everything, and I think that was the part of the blessing of the 6-month delay, that it put us in this position where we were talking and talking and talking, and folks got into a seeing is believing mode, and as they came into the space, they could see things that they had heard about. They could see and feel things that I had been excited about talking about. And so there's like, oh, this is what they meant. This is what she said, and sort of those kinds of things. So it hasn't been too much shifting.
That 6 months
so
was
far.
pretty much like a lot of test driving.
It was.
And you got to see things. That's good.
It was.
Good.
Best case scenario, you would pre-plan your
Right.
6 months of test driving, but never let a good crisis go to waste.
Wow. Darius, what else you got? You've been asking great questions.
Man, I don't want to hog the
Go ahead, hog
the mic.
Hog away. Hog away. Keep it on the marketing side, right? We got 3 minutes here, so we kind of have to wrap it up a little bit, Dee. So give us your best.
My best. Okay.
As if you haven't been already, bud.
What have you learned about marketing for a
Thank
museum?
You. Yep.
Yeah.
That was on my mind.
At this point, because I know you've done museums in the past, but
I have.
not here in Charleston.
Right.
Not a African American museum.
So I would say probably one of the biggest learning curves that I'm having, that we're working through, is around marketing inside of a tourism city. A high tourism city, right?
Okay.
And so you got to understand that the visitors to Charleston outnumber the people who live in the greater Charleston area, like by magnitude. Now, interestingly, this is familiar-ish because I'm from Washington, D.C., But then I just got to, give the side eye to tourists. I didn't have to market to them. And so in this space, it becomes very interesting because the whole design of a museum is you do not want it to be one and done. You want people to have to feel like they have to come back again and again, particularly for your local audiences, right? Because you want them to support, you want them to be excited about coming back again and again. However, if the majority of the people, and I just mean people in the community, I mean like at any given moment, are not from here, right? And are indeed sort of passing through and probably have 4 or 5 things on their itinerary, how do you create an experience for them that is meaningful and compact enough that they can get through, can fit it in, want to come back, but don't have to come back. You don't want folks to say, well, it was great, but, unless you got a couple days in Charleston, I wouldn't necessarily do that. And so that has been a very interesting, I think, balancing act in terms of the design as well as the marketing.
Okay. So for people that are not local, how do I stay, current with what's going on in the museum? Is it social media? What's the social media handles? How do I stay up to date?
So it's all of that because like a lot of institutions, we were already programming through the pandemic, and we had to pilot a lot of our programs online. So we've kept a lot of them. So for example, our genealogy programs, we do monthly, quarterly deep dive webinars. Okay. And our genealogy one-on-one sessions are actually also virtual. We do some of our speaker series. We actually live stream those. So we're on, all of your basic social media. So International African American Museum, or IAA Museum, sort of just like our website as well.
Follow the museum.
Follow.
Like and subscribe.
Like me. Thank you.
Crushed today. Thank you for everything. Thank you for doing what you're doing. The museum. I do want to go back. I'm breaking. I had the opportunity to go by myself, and that was a really great experience to go by myself. Not one to go to places by myself. I need people, but I went by myself and I loved it. And I can't wait to take my family.
Thank you.
And go again. No, thank you, Dr. Matthews. I'll do the closing, D. I'll do the closing. Before we leave, thanks, Darius. Did a great job co-hosting today. Appreciate you.
Thanks for having me.
Well done.
Yep. Before we leave, I'd like to also thank our sponsors, Charleston Radio Group, Jerry Feels Good, and of course, the American Marketing Association. Hey, if you want to sponsor or be a guest on our show, reach out to podcast@charlestonama.org, and we'll get right back to you. Thanks again, Dr. Matthews.
You are so welcome. You're welcome.
Until next time, Charleston.
Bye.
Bye.